My great-aunt Jillian is the most passionate of music lovers, and I've always admired her wealth of knowledge when it comes to ballet and classical music. Her late husband, Richard Beattie Davis, was a musicologist and collector of the works of philanthropist M.P. Belaieff, a well-known Russian music promoter and publisher during the late 1800s. It became their life's work to find first and early editions of printed music scores, and this would eventually lead to an exhibition at the Barbican Centre in London, and later to its summation by the publication of The Beauty of Belaieff. The collection will soon be donated to the Bodleian in Oxford, but before it goes, I revisited my great-aunt Jillian to learn a little more about it and her.
I trained at Arts Educational School at Tring, but prior to that I was in America. I was under contract to MGM to replace Shirley Temple because I was of the same era, and of course I had done a lot of dancing, and I went out to America to work in MGM. And then at the end of the war we came back, and then I went to the Arts Ed at Tring. But I always wanted to be a composer. I really didn't want to be a dancing teacher. But dancing is like music because, it's all intertwined. Well, Belaieff was a Russian music publisher. He was also a multimillionaire timber merchant, so money was no object. And he was also a fellow who enjoyed playing in a quartet, although not up to professional standards, but he would have all the most important composers of the time there to his home, in what you found to be the Fridays, and they would play all sorts of music with him also playing the viola. And he decided in the beginning to set up a publishing firm, really to publish one composer, who was Alexander Glazunov, who was a prodigiously gifted young man as a teenager, and he wrote his first symphony when he was in his teens, and Belaieff published it. And from there he went on to publish mainly Russian composers. More than that, it was the style at that time to put these beautiful illustrations on the front, because of course there wasn't TV or the internet or anything else. So how was somebody going to be drawn to order that music? So they put these fabulous title pages.
Oh, wow.
That's number, I think it's one of 12. It's 12. I mean, there won't be 12 living now.
No, certainly not. This could be the only one.
It could,
imagine.
Yeah. And it is, an orchestral score.
Oh, look at this. Yeah. So is this the conductor making notes?
Yes. Yes, the conductor, Vladimir Yurovsky, he came down to see because he hadn't seen a first edition of it, not of this one, but of something else that we had. And he was just amazed, at all the writing. It was this one. Yeah. He hadn't seen.
All the notes.
Hitesh. But he was so funny. They've taped over, and he said, "But it has been raped," because it had been taped over the original. Yeah. I took Richard's book to Russia the year after he died because I wanted to explain to them in Russia what we were doing. And I lectured at the conservatoire, and so many of the ones I had on the disc from the book, they'd never seen, and it was amazing to hear their reaction. And of course, the first thing they wanted was a copy of the disc, so they had it. That's one of my favourites.
Beautiful.
Yeah. And this music here shown was incorporated into the symphony. We bought this whole collection. We had everything else except this. And that's why we bought this book of pieces. In Russia, they had been used for lighting fires and everything else.
Oh, my goodness, yeah.
But those that weren't, that were in France or Germany. In America, we found a lot in America because a lot of emigres went to America.
Took the music with them.
Took what they could with them. Yeah.
So could you tell me about Richard's first introduction to the music and how his collection started and where it kind of went from there?
I think he said when he was in the army in the war, the Second World War, he was posted in Italy, and there were all these foreign army men who they were displaced persons, and because of Richard's language skills, he was part of that, involved in that. And they used to march around the countryside singing their native songs, be they Ukrainian or Russian or whatever. And he said, I mean, he was always interested in music, but he said that that's where he thought that love for Russian music. And then when he started, he collected all music. It's not just Russian music. But he started collecting it. He realized how hard it was to find ones that were in this particular publication. He reckoned there were probably 250 to 280 colored title pages. And there were no records of, maybe there would be the ones they printed in 1885, but not of the overall picture. So anyway, he decided that he really should try and preserve them for no other reason other than they were just disappearing. And so he started bringing them back and studying them. And then, of course, everywhere we went, we looked for Belaieff and other title pages and other music. But it became quite obvious that we had one special trend was to look for Belaieff. In fact, he would take first editions to class to play for us. And I said to him, we really must stop this because they get torn. And so I said, and in those days, we didn't have that many places for photocopying. Then he gradually started to put his mind towards making an actual book and cataloguing every one that he could find, every coloured title page. And Richard started collecting them to play. For no other reason that he wanted to play the music of Glazunov and Blumenfeld and these other ones. And when I first met Richard, he had some of them framed on the wall, but they were the original pieces of music, bent backwards and put in a frame. And then when I came on the scene, I said, I'm not so sure we should be doing this to the actual music. But if we get a duplicate, we could always take the title page off, which was not good advice either. But then we found a really fine photographer who in Tunbridge Wells, Roddy Payne, and he did all these reprints of the actual originals. And then we approached the Barbican, who were thrilled to have an exhibition there. I think it was 1987. The exhibition itself, we had an official opening, and we had some lovely people came to it. Really important musical people. When we were trying to get the book, we were talking about the book and publishing, and people said, well, there's not really a demand for that. And I kept saying to them that it's not only the music, but it's the art, and it's the lithography, and it's the history of it. So it was so needed, shall we say.
Oh, wow. That's gorgeous, isn't it? So detailed.
And when you think how many years, it's 100 years old, more than 100 years old, and still the colours.
Vibrant.
Yeah. I was fortunate enough, my dear late husband let me design my house, and I designed it for the collection. The exhibition from the Barbican, as you know, it goes all the way up the stairs, which was obviously pre-planned. And then they had to put extra support in his study because they knew it was going to have all those books and all that music. And we have CDs, LPs, and even 78s as well of some of the music. So that is also heavy. But there is not a room, including the cloakroom, where there is not music. It just is everywhere. I can't say I'm a composer, but I love writing little melodies. Well, when you were born, I wrote a piece of music, and then when your brother was born, I wrote a piece for him called Peace for Peter, and Suzy's is called Suzanne. It was called Suzanne's Lullaby, but now she's known as Suzy. So, and then I wrote my own wedding march when I was 14, actually. And I had to hold on for a long time because I didn't marry my beloved till I was 47. But it was beautifully played on an organ. We were married in a wildlife preserve in Florida, in the Everglades. And Richard said I came out of the waterway, you know, out of the forest like a rusalka, which is a mermaid, on the arm of my father. And we had the music because I used to work for the radio station out there, and they'd recorded somebody playing on the organ in a church, and it came wafted out of these Everglades, a piece of music I had written. And then another one I wrote after Richard left. I thought I must record that he was here, and I wrote a reverie for him, which Daniel Grimwood arranged for cello. So I have it for piano and cello. And I do love playing music. I may not be very good, but I do love it. And, you know, it gives me a great feeling of accomplishment, really. Well, it's a memorial to my husband because he was very interested in buses, and there was just a bus bench down there, but it was very much weathered, and he said, you know, put a new bench there, put my name on it. And I said, well, if we just put a bench, it's going to get weathered as well. So he said, oh, in that case, put a bus stop. So we did, and the bench I got from a local place, and they had a choice of putting a marker on it, and I said, can it be in any language? And they said yes, because it's all done by computer. So I said, well, I want it in Russian. So it says on there, "Do svidaniya, mой muž," which means till later, my husband. And so when people read it, it says that he was a Russian musicologist, and if they are Russians, they will read that notice and know that, you know, he was the real deal.